Have you ever played Crusader Kings 3 and had your character die before they were ready to? Sometimes, I wonder about where my favorite characters get whisked away to when they pass away preemptively. Maybe they're in heaven, maybe they're in hell. I used to wonder about that. But then I got my hands on Age of Wonders 4 and I was given a true explanation about where exactly my favorite heroes of Crusader Kings 3 go. It was to a place called the Mage Haven that they arrived, where their lives would transform forever. In some cases, they themselves would transform into something far greater than before. For today's video, which I've been sponsored by Paradox to make, thank you Paradox's sponsorship, I'll be taking you through the conquest of a new world under the legendary Roman Emperor Basileios Makedon, the Roman Emperor in 1066 in Crusader Kings 3. Nothing more than a peasant, Basil in his time on Earth accomplished much, but was ripped from the world before he could achieve more. He came to the Mage Haven with some of his most loyal Romans, who were transformed by the trip. These lupine warriors have taken their mythical origins from Romulus and Remus a bit more literally, and so follow their emperor to a new world of conquest on the backs of their white wolves. They are an oath-sworn culture with a dedication to strife, swearing that no land shall remain unconquered while they live. The more they dedicate themselves to this cause, the greater the flames of war grow within them. Now that we have the primary cultural drive of our Romans, we have to pick their society traits. Deification of emperors may have ended when Christianity came to the Romans, but in this new world, Christianity has no power. Already, Basil has been deified by his followers, and so they worship him. Of course, the other aspect of Roman culture is the return to the greatest plunder around: slaves. These conquerors take no quarter and will burn down every city they find to drag its people kicking and screaming back to Constantinople. Finally, Basil has been presented with a selection of magical tomes which will inform what powers he and his subjects will have. There are many options. However, the Roman army has always been one of hardened steel in the face of its great enemies. The Tome of Discipline, which focuses on industry and order, will keep the Roman ranks shackled in place. Their will to fight shall be trance-like, and their desire to please their emperor equally so. While of course the ultimate ambition of any Roman is to conquer, Basil himself personally wants to see the rewards of his conquest come to him in troves of treasure. He's a collector, and so, as he finds and uses new items, he'll gain more and more power. This is our new custom faction, the Romans of Basileios Makedon, and if you're a little confused about this game because you're unfamiliar with it, don't worry too much. As I play, I'll explain some of the mechanics of the game, and if you're watching this video right when it's coming out, then you're in luck. Age of Wonders 4 is going to have a free weekend from November 7th to November 11th, and you can go learn how the game works by just playing it. One thing about Age of Wonders I personally appreciate is that it feels like a very complete and high quality game even without any DLC, as I had been playing it without any DLC for weeks before Paradox sponsored me for this video. That's the last thing I'll mention before we dive into the game. I have been given early access to the Age of Wonders 4 Ways of War DLC and have been sponsored by Paradox to make this video. I've got over 100 hours in the game before even being sponsored though, so rest assured this is not my first rodeo. Anyway, no more delays, let's get Basil to the portal in Mage Haven and see where he'll go. I lied, people. We're not getting into the game quite yet because we first have to determine what our new Roman realm is going to look like. There are a lot of options and they pretty drastically affect the world. I don't want to do anything too wacky, so I'm going to put on the Land of Conflict, which will spawn in more Accursed Fiend units, which are a new unit type from the Ways of War DLC. I'm also going to add in Chaotic Influence, which makes every ruler slowly start to hate each other. It takes a while, but it essentially ensures that no one will ever be friends for long. Finally, I'm adding in Unfolding Mysteries, which makes certain kinds of event chains more likely to happen. These little event chains are also new to Ways of War, and they're very cool little stories that have a huge influence on the game, you'll see later. Peering into the portal, Basil saw his destiny, and so he left the Mage Haven to enter the portal and begin his new adventure, Tome of Discipline in hand. The Romans constructed their throne city, Constantinople, from which Basil will rule and dominate this land. Age of Wonders 4, in case you didn't know, is a 4X game akin to Civilization, which means you'll be exploring, expanding, exploiting, and exterminating. Emphasis on the exterminating in this case. This game distinguishes itself by featuring a tactical battle simulation for each fight on the map, which means it's a game of strategic skill on a macro level, but also one of tactical skill on a micro level. I tend to just auto-resolve most of the tactical battles because, quite frankly, I'm not very good at them, and I generally play 4X games for the macro gameplay, but I'll do a couple battles here and there. There's a group of marauders just outside Constantinople who could be a great opportunity to test out our Roman metal, and so Basil led his men in the charge against them. They took up positions in the trees to keep safe from any ranged attacks that might be coming their way. This proved to be wise, as the enemy battle mage missed their shot thanks to the thick tree line. In retaliation, Basil himself rode up on his enemies and bid his white wolf howl with its cold breath at them, sapping their strength and life. From there, the Roman wolves engaged in combat with the enemy vanguard, using pikes, wolves, and magic of their own to attack. The inherent agility of the mounted Romans made escape impossible, as already their cowardly foes were on the run. Not a single foe was spared, as the enemy was defeated, and so Rome claims her first victory in this world. Afterwards, Basil considered what powers he'd like to extract from his tome. Its many pages are filled with spells and knowledge beyond anything back on Earth, and he decided he'd like to learn of the Empowered Strikes enchantment spell, which will make his soldiers fight with disciplined, focused energy in each movement. Enchantments are spells which cost mana every turn to keep up and which modify all units of a particular type while the spell is up. Empowered Strikes will add a point of damage to all my melee units and give them a stun chance, which sounds pretty good to me. These enchantments and spells we unlock will more or less create our build. There's a ton of unique combinations which, as we get later into the game, will get crazier and crazier. Just keep in mind that your enemies will be making their own builds too. Regardless, the first day ended with victory and reports from the scouts of the land to the south of Constantinople. Basil himself strode out of the city to explore the north of this land, and in the distance he saw a massive tree. Whatever it is, it's worth investigating. Along the way there, he picked up a shield which looked to be completely frozen, yet not freezing cold to the touch. It was a magical treasure which would reflect back the freezing cold of Britannia on those who would strike him. It's the first of many great treasures that will line the armories of Rome one day. Constantinople grew in population on this day as well, and the way expansion works is that every population member allows a city to expand its borders by one sector, and that sector gives out resources based on what you make there. Farms give food, quarries give production, mines give gold, and foresters give draft and food. Draft is like production, but only for units. There are other more specialized buildings we'll see later too, but for now we've just got the basics. I started off with a forester to help me produce more units and grow the city. I also hired a new hero, Boruf Hu, which I would later rename once I remembered I was making a YouTube video with a story in it and not just playing for fun. Heading east to wrap back around to Constantinople, the scouts reported that some rogue Romans founded their own city called Dudeford. Traitorous Romans, these wolves of Dudeford, they have declared war on the Roman Empire, and so they will be crushed, at least once Basil built up a proper army to face them. Soon after, the scouts reported contact with a new group of beings who also claimed to be Romans. These Romans are more humanoid than ours, but their leader was certainly not. A dragon, calling himself Frederick Barbarossa, came forward to speak with Basil, scoffing at his supposed Romans. Barbarossa claimed to be the leader of the Romans, ruling from Aachen. It seems more historical figures than just Basil have found themselves in this new land, and that some of them have been affected by it much more harshly. For now, the two Roman empires are maintaining a cold peace, with neither side being ready for some kind of confrontation, but perhaps one day that will change. In the north, the great tree Basil spotted was in fact one of the many ancient world trees of the realm. However, this one was cursed. To cleanse it and use its great natural power would require an imperial expedition that Basil was not ready for yet. Instead, he gave the order to found an outpost next to it, in preparation for the creation of a great city. Near the tree, he also found two things of interest: another free city of rat-like people called the Rat Evokers, and an infestation of great birds. Infestations are enemy monsters which over time grow in power and eventually begin raiding the map. If they're defeated, they yield great rewards, and if left alone, they will eventually send out armies to burn down your regions and maybe even your cities. Rather than let such an infestation fester, Basil attacked it with his men and claimed a great victory despite the odds. Inside was yet another artifact, the Shielding Cloak. It would give him a magical attunement whenever a spell is cast in battle, while also making him more resistant to magical effects broadly. From this battle, he also leveled up, and if you're familiar with Age of Wonders 4, this will look very new to you. No longer do you pick a skill from a selection in a column, but instead you invest skill points into nodes on the tree, and every 4 levels you gain a signature skill slot. We'll look at that once we hit level 4. Anyway, it's time to cast our Empowering Strike spell and buff all the melee units in our army. Some enchantments give cooler looking effects than others, and Empowered Strikes gives a little glow to the blades on their weapons. Not bad. We can also see at the top of the screen that I've gained a new level of devotion. I am now an adherent, which means I'm doing a good job of following my oath. Because of that, my units deal extra fire damage and my cities are happier. On day 10, we founded the city of Rome and put Marcus Antonius in charge as its governor. Governors give different bonuses to cities depending on their governor type. Marcus here is a fortifying governor, so that'll be nice for a city on the front lines. In this case, I'm using him because he's the only other hero I have. The next day, Basil met another competitor in this world, Vratislav Przemyśl, who governed the Kingdom of Bohemia in his time on Earth. Now he's here, ruling from Prague with his people. In another realm, Vratislav could have proven a great ally for Basil, but the chaotic influence of this land makes diplomacy difficult. The first Dudeford forces made their way towards Constantinople, but Basil and Marcus were in position to intercept them. Basil had the advantage and took up position in the trees along a nearby hill, while maneuvering around the hill to flank his opponent. The enemy Romans fought fiercely, inflicting heavy casualties right away, but thanks to his vow keepers, Basil kept casualties low for his forces. He cast a spell of counterstance on his men, which would make them enter defensive stances after attacking, after which Marcus Antonius ripped the spearmen ahead of him to shreds. Flanking attacks do extra damage and inflict morale damage, which makes them critical to winning battles in the tactical fight mode. The Roman cavalry followed it up with a charge from behind and eliminated an entire legion of spearmen, leaving just the enemy hero and one contingent of cavalry. The cavalry were speared on Basil's own pikemen, but they survived. In the meantime, Basil and his men circled around and got the flank on the enemy hero. In response, the Dudeford Romans couldn't do much besides at least try and inflict casualties. Because of the defensive stance my pikemen took after attacking, they were able to attack in retaliation against their mounted foes twice and inflict more damage than they sustained. With ease, the remaining cavalry were cut down, and then Basil himself put down the enemy hero. A successful fight with no long-term losses for the Roman Empire. Very inspiring. The corpse of that hero, Chiren's stone throw, was taken to the Constantinople crypt, where her body was sold for a measly sum. When a hero corpse is sold, you get any artifacts they had on them and you get money, but if you keep a hero in your crypt, there are buildings later in the game that let you get mana out of them, and certain builds can make use of corpses. Also, when you sell the body, it goes back to whoever it owned, and you can resurrect a body using mana, so sometimes you want to keep the corpse in your crypt so the other person can't have it. Basil hit level 4 shortly after this, and so, instead of a simple signature ability, I get to choose to become an initiate of a particular affinity. From that affinity choice, I get 2 abilities to choose from. You can see my affinities in the top right corner. I've got 2 Order, 2 Chaos, 1 Materium, and 1 Shadow. I grabbed Searing Strikes for Basil, which makes his attacks deal a little bit of bonus damage, and have a chance to make an enemy burn for a few turns. Then, just before ending my turn, I got to meet the next competing lord for this land, Urraca Jimena of Zamora. She'll be put to the side for now, as the Empire's focus is on the destruction of Dudeford. To help with that, Basil's looking to hire some help. Who else would a Roman emperor hire if not a Varangian to help out? And it just so happens that a very famous Norman adventurer named Robert Guiscard, who is no mere man in this world, is available. Robert Guiscard, like Frederick Barbarossa, has transformed into a beastly dragon. Truly a formidable friend to have, this Robert. This hero is from the Pantheon, which means he's the leader of a faction which I've beaten a game with previously, and he's not currently on the map. In Age of Wonders, characters that win games ascend to godhood and can then appear in the game either as other factions or indeed as heroes for us to recruit. When you start the game, your Pantheon will be empty, so you'll have to go win your first game to get an ascended champion like this. Regardless, it's time to siege down Dudeford, which will take some turns. A city has a level of defense, in this case 20, and my army will generate siege progress each turn. By default, it's 10, but we can spend money or mana on siege projects that can speed that up or add modifiers to the siege battle itself. I'm going to spend 60 gold on harassing the enemy, which will deal a bit of damage to them right when the fight starts, and I'll undermine the walls to make it easier for my units to get in. In response to my siege, Dudeford sent an army out to try and defeat me preemptively, however they were defeated, albeit at a cost to my army. Instead of accepting the auto-resolved result, I chose to run the battle myself to try and mitigate my losses. I lost 6 men in the automated battle, and by fighting the battle myself, I managed to reduce that casualty count to 4, but I had a very special casualty. My ruler, Basil, died in combat, which is a little painful, but not so bad. When your ruler dies, he enters the Void, which prevents all diplomacy, lowers all city happiness, and stops all research. If you lose your throne city while your ruler is in the Void, then the game is over. And in this case, I'd rather have 3 turns of being in the Void than losing 6 units, so I'll take this outcome. By default, you can restart battles as many times as you want, but there's a setting you can use to turn that off if you want. Personally, I like it since it makes me feel like I can take more risks in battle and play with fun in mind. If something goes horribly wrong, I can always go in and try again if it really matters to me. Anyway, the next turn, Dudeford's walls fell, and there was no army inside to protect them, so my men simply walked in and began burning the city down. For their insolence, the Dudeford Romans will be wiped out from this world, and the real Romans will make a pretty penny on looting their streets. The turn after, Basil returned from the void and all was right in the world. It's time to resume research, and once that's done, pick a new tome. As you play the game and complete research, you'll gain access to new tomes which give affinities and new technology to research. Your tomes very much so define your build in the game, and you can mix and match pretty much however you want. Considering I recently hired Robert Giscard, a dragon, I took the Tome of Evolution, which grants access to some basic wyvern-like units and that draconic vitality race transformation. Race transformations are similar to enchantments, except they have no upkeep and permanently alter all units and heroes of a particular race. The mechanic around dragon units from this tome is evolution, where if they reach maximum veterancy, they evolve into a higher tier unit. It's pretty cool as an idea, but in practice it takes a very long time to max out veterancy. By the time you do, you'll likely have unlocked higher tier units anyway, so I don't care for it. I next took a look at my Empire development skills, which are Empire-wide modifiers you can buy for Imperium. Imperium is the resource that lets you found new cities, recruit Pantheon heroes, and get these abilities, alongside the option to rush new population growth. It's also a resource used for upkeep with the very highest level units. The abilities granted via Empire development skills are pretty vast, but are the same across all games. You unlock access to them based on your affinities, and because my affinities are spread pretty lightly across many options, I unlock these pretty slowly. If I had taken society traits that were more focused on one affinity, I'd unlock more options in that affinity track faster, but unlock absolutely no options in the other affinities. I already have the War Slave skill because I took Merciless Slavers as a cultural trait, you'll remember. Anyway, the next set of turns mostly just saw me building up my army. I'm planning to eventually take down my enemies, but I want to do it when I feel powerful enough to do so. I'm going to expand my cities and look for neutral marauder armies to fight for experience on my heroes. Marauder armies, which are gray in color on the map, never attack you, but can freely be attacked for rewards. They're AI armies, but they're not like infestations. An army from an infestation is red and will seek out and attack your armies by contrast. Over top of the city of Dudeford, I've given Robert Giscard the governorship of a new city, the city of Londinum. I know it's supposed to be Londinium. I misspelled it in the game and then just ran with it, so deal with it. On the coast will be my launch pad towards the east, where across the seas I believe there may be more conquests awaiting me. To the south of Constantinople, Basil and Marcus Antonius brought armies to confront a camp of brigands, while the scouts moved further south to find more infestations. In theory, I actually have an interest in keeping infestations around a bit, since I can keep fighting the enemies they spawn to farm XP, and I can let their power grow so their rewards grow, but I also just kind of want to get rid of them just in case they somehow overwhelm me. The brigand camp itself is actually quite a bit stronger than I'd have expected, and they attacked me first. Thankfully, their disorganized armies have nothing on a proper Roman line. What truly makes the difference when fighting infestations is that infestations can't cast any spells, since they have no proper ruler or tome, but we'll pretend it's just the superiority of my units. In the brigand's coffers, Basil found a sword enchanted with lightning and took it, ready to slay more foes. Indeed, the foe he might slay with it, he has just found. The scouts report yet another ruler to the south, Saladin, as he was known on Earth. He goes by his name Yusuf here. He's got a small set of wings and one of his arms is covered in boulders. This is because when I did my campaign as Saladin to put him in the Pantheon, I did some racial transformations on him, which we'll be doing to Basil as well later on. Racial transformations carry over between campaigns, so Saladin here has the Dragonkin transformation making him a dragon unit, and he has the Stone Form transformation giving him movement speed in mountains and additional defense. Rather than focus on Saladin, though, I went north to confront Urraca, whose cities were gaining influence too close to mine. I'll take a few turns to get into position after defeating a group of birds that have been menacing the city. It's just some side quests I didn't really read, but basically you can do side quests to get rewards. They have little stories, but I usually just click them mindlessly like I would in Crusader Kings 3. News from the east reached Constantinople when it was reported that a ruler Basil had not yet met named Haston had a new region installed. This is one of the new intrigue features, and unfortunately because it happened to someone very far away from me, I won't be interacting with it much. In a different campaign I played with the Ways of War DLC, a similar event happened which replaced the ruler of a nation with a demonic Baelor, and I fought to restore that ruler to their throne. It was very cool. I imagine something similar is going on here, but I'm not sure because I didn't pursue the storyline for it. In the waters to the west of the birds Basil had just defeated, there was a ghostly cove of restless sailors which were haunting the local waters. Naturally, the opportunity to fight more infestations was attractive, although I also wanted to fight Urraca. It's always hard to decide between opportunities. I ended up fighting the infestation and found Merlin's robes there, which boost magic attacks. Unfortunately, none of my heroes use magic, but once I find one that does, this will be very useful. Just north of Rome, I spotted a massive group of soldiers from Uraraka's ranks, and I actually got quite scared. I'm entirely out of position thanks to my little jaunt to fight the infestations, and if Uraraka wanted to invade right now, she could do so very easily. I don't even have a palisade wall in Rome, so she can take the city without a fight or a siege. She can just walk in and claim it. Then, during her turn, she did indeed walk into my territory, which made me think a war was declared, but turns out she just wanted to trespass for some reason. I'm playing the game on normal, and I find it to be a pretty acceptable difficulty, but certainly a harder AI would have seen the literally free city of Rome and just grabbed it. I'm not that good at 4X games, normal is good for me, maybe I'll try hard one day. What likely is stopping her is our grievance balance. In Age of Wonders 4, you can always declare war, but doing so without justification carries heavy negatives, while doing so with strong justification has some nice boosts. In the case of Uraraka here, she has not a single grievance against me, while I have a major war justification on her. This is because she's been claiming land so close to my borders, while I haven't been doing anything. If I had expanded a bit more aggressively to the north, she might have had a real opportunity. Regardless, it's time to pick another new tome. We're on to the tier 2 tomes, and I chose the tome of the Construct. It gives access to the Linked Minds race transformation, which will make my units gain higher defense when standing together. I think it's fitting for the whole Roman discipline idea if every Roman can share their thoughts and morale. I also get access to these cool bronze golems, which are a nice unit overall to use. I finally got my armies to Rome, ready to attack Uraraka on turn 43, at which point I declared war with a major justification. It makes every ruler and free city like me more, and gives me bonus Imperium each turn while the war is going on. Immediately, the armies marched to Arcadia, whose walls were inadequate to hold back the Romans for anything more than a day or two. I then also recruited Rodrigo el Cid, an archer with an astral attunement. He fights by summoning units to protect him while he shoots a bow from behind them. A cursory force of defenders came to Arcadia to try and save the city, but they stood no chance, and we slaughtered them, along with the people of Arcadia. Those who were strong were enslaved, and those who were not worth keeping were discarded. It'll take 3 turns to burn the city down, but the money, population, and Imperium from doing so is absolutely worth it. Next we march on Clanhurst. That was my thought anyway, until Uraraka's main army arrived behind me to reclaim Arcadia before it could be burned down. I'll have to siege the city again, but now I can defeat Uraraka and her main fighting force on the field. She felt cocky and attacked me before the siege could end. Although Basil won the battle, he took huge losses. Nonetheless, it's a worthwhile victory to see Uraraka defeated. She'll need time and money to rebuild that army, and in that time, her cities will crumble. Not to mention, Rodrigo and his forces will reinforce from behind to ensure victory. It was also on this day that the scouts met the last ruler on the map, Matilda di Canossa. She's an angel, and if you're wondering why she's green, it's because she's also a leafkin. She's one with nature, a combination of the righteous power of faith and the savage power of nature. It felt fitting. Once Rodrigo arrived, another one of Uraraka's armies was ended, and thus the sack of Arcadia began again. Time for a new tome, and we'll be taking the tome of Revelry. Roman decadence is legendary, and using the power of confidence and debauchery on the field will make them a truly feared opponent. I'll be grabbing the Scald, a support unit that can heal and buff its allies. I also added the first race transformation to my Romans, the Draconic Vitality transformation. This is a much lighter transformation than the one Saladin has, as this one just grants some extra health and some spikes to the units. No wings and no dragon unit type, not yet anyway. Arcadia was burned to the ground and its people enslaved while the army marched on to Clanhurst for real this time. In case you're wondering where Uraraka's capital of Zamora is, the answer is that it's actually underground. There's a whole other map beneath the map that you can see, so we'll have to enter the underground and destroy Zamora eventually. The war is going great, but a wrench was thrown into my plans when Vratislav declared an opportunistic war on me from the east. He's been expanding his outposts in the underground beneath my cities, and now he's taken the opportunity to try and take Londonum while I'm busy. Thankfully, his armies are across the seas, and that gives me at least a few turns before I'll be in danger. Using the money from burning down Arcadia, I rushed out some units who I'm hoping can hold off whatever cursory forces Vratislav sends, but a proper invasion force will need my proper army to hold it off. Uraraka attempted to relieve the siege of Clanhurst but was defeated again. Finally, the city will burn, and while it burns, Basil and his men have already moved on to Zamora, ready to remove Uraraka and her treachery from the realm for good. I've hired Eleanor of Aquitaine to hold off Vratislav, as she uses magic and therefore can wear Merlin's robes. Vratislav's forces are about to land on Londonov's coast as Eleanor has arrived, and the realm is counting on her to defend the city. It seems like Vratislav's army is just scouting though, as they went past the city but quickly turned around, presumably upon seeing that Londonum wasn't undefended. Turns out his home cities are being sieged by Hastin's regent, so he's not able to dedicate many men to the Roman front. Rather than continue to worry about Vratislav's potential attack, Basil made a truce with him, deciding to come for him later, at a time more convenient for the Empire. Back in Zamora, the siege is nearly over, and Urraca has raised all the forces she can for one last desperate defense. It's a risky battle for Basil, but he will not be stopped this late into the campaign. He achieved a final victory, banishing Urraca to the void and claiming Zamora so it can be destroyed. He spent lavish gold on a parade celebrating his conquest of Urraca's throne. Over the ruins of Clanhurst, another new Roman city would be founded, Celebae, which I forgot to rename. We'll say it's a local name. Anyway, new tome time. I grabbed the tome of the Cleansing Flame, which focuses on a mechanic based around marking units as condemned and then dealing extra fire and spirit damage to them if they're marked as condemned. Most of these sorts of tactics are things you can really dig into if you're interested in working hard on the tactical battles, but for me it's all about the story and the roleplay personally, since I don't enjoy the tactical battles as much. To be clear, that's not because they're not fun, it's more because I'm impatient and they take a lot longer than an auto-resolve click. In this time of peace, Basil realized that he had an opportunity to clear out the great world trees around his empire that he'd mostly left alone due to their guardian's power. Each wonder is either bronze, silver, or gold tier, and these trees are gold tier. A gold tier wonder is pretty tough to clear out, but once I clear it out, I can recruit special units from it, and I can put one of my expansions over it to gain some Imperium and other resources depending on the wonder. First, the Guardian Tree, which I spent some mana on to get a bonus in combat, and then I won the battle with no casualties. Very nice. As an immediate reward, I got some research, and I could choose another reward. I could take this ring, which inflicts condemned on an enemy, which is convenient considering my recent tome choice. I could gain 6 population in Celebae, or just get 2 units, one of which is a tier 5 mythic horned god, a top tier unit. I chose to put 6 new pops in Celebae since it currently only has 2. It was probably an unwise choice, but I love expanding cities, so I did it. That horned god might have been a better choice if we're being honest. Next is the Blighted Tree, which has spent some turns of growth in Rome on to ease the poison of. I once again won the battle with no losses, mostly because the army is literally 5 heroes and a scald that buffs them. From this tree, I can get a ring that makes me immune to poison, I can get a couple of mediocre units, or a unique Thunderbird mount. I chose the poison immunity ring, although I should have thought about it more. None of my enemies are using undead or nature-based armies, which might inflict blight, except Matilda, but she's very far away. I doubt the poison immunity ring will come in handy very often against Vratislav or Saladin. Speaking of Saladin, it's time for an expedition to Cairo. The men lined up on the border by the Fortress of Tears, but before the war could begin, a random city-state called the Astral Anchorage decided to get all uppity and challenge Basil. This city-state is conveniently positioned quite close to Saladin, so conquering it is actually a pretty good move strategically. War it is, but not against Saladin. Instead, the Astral Anchorage will be a stepping stone to Cairo. The city itself is already under threat from a derelict workshop infestation, pumping out golems and constructs that raid and pillage the city. Why these upstarts felt the need to provoke the Roman Empire is anyone's guess. The Astral Anchorage came under siege with no hope of victory, and the men simply waited until the walls fell. While waiting for that, I can show you the real purpose behind conquering those wonders. When I said you can recruit unique units, that's done via the Rally of the Lieges mechanic, which is a list of expensive but quickly recruitable units that are generated based on what wonders you occupy and what city-states you're friends with. In my case, I have no friends, since every city-state I pretty much just conquer, but if I were playing friendly with them, I could add units from their race to my army. It can make for some fun synergies if you make friends with city-states that complement your army well. Instead, I'll only have access to wonder units, which are too expensive for me to take right now, but which in the future I could grab up. Anyway, the Astral Anchorage was easily burned to the ground, and as a bonus, the army went west to eradicate that derelict workshop. The army traveled back to Saladin's border with renewed morale and recovered the supplies and weapons in Constantinople briefly. In that waiting time, Basil selected a new Tome of Magic, grabbing the Tome of Dragons. Again, we're focusing on fire damage here, and I particularly want this tome for the Dragon Attack Siege project, which lets me deal a ton of damage to defenders in siege and inflict burning on them. I can also go for the Draconian transformation if I want to gain the dragon unit type, but I don't have much synergy with dragons, so it doesn't feel that useful. By themselves, dragon units gain extra damage when they're low on health, so it's not totally pointless. I did cast the Blood Fury Weapons enchantment on my units to give them an extra dose of physical damage and make them gain morale and strength when they kill units. It's sort of like a win harder enchantment, so that if a battle is in my favor, I can more easily win a total victory with hopefully fewer losses. This build would do well against an undead army, which is typically composed of many weaker units and which focuses on reducing morale, as I can keep gaining morale back from killing tiny enemies. Looking at my grievances with Saladin, it looks like I've got some on him, and he's got some on me. I want to make a majorly justified war, so I'm actually going to pay off some of my grievances. If you do something wrong to someone and want forgiveness, you can always pay for it. I can't afford to clear my last grievance, so I'll wait one more turn, allowing me to move from a moderate war justification to a major one. Unfortunately, Saladin is allied to Vratislav, so both of them will be fighting me. Here's hoping Vratislav is still busy with Hastin's regent. I began my siege of Pebbleton while building up a larger army back home to potentially fend off any Bohemian invaders. I also spent my Imperium on hiring another Pantheon hero, Alparslan Seljuk, who embraced undeath to keep fighting forever. He's a very strong hero already, and he'll be leading the defense of my cities against Vratislav. Pebbleton fell with little effort, and its citizens were put to the sword. Just past the city was a relatively large Egyptian army, albeit without any heroes to support it. A hero can be a huge boon to an army, so just sending units without leadership against me is a huge mistake on Saladin's part. That was until some heroes arrived by ship, and Basil was ambushed in the forest between Pebbleton and Cairo. Nonetheless, the Ayyubid armies aren't particularly threatening. It's a low-risk battle with victory for the Romans almost assured. A great victory, with no losses for Rome, was the news sent to Saladin, who presumably crumbled at the loss of one of his heroes and his army. When a hero dies, they die, although their corpse is taken by whoever won the battle. If a hero dies but that hero's side wins, they can be revived with mana pretty easily, but if the corpse is captured, you'll have to either take it from the city where it's being stored by force, or end the war and trade for the corpse, or, hope that the enemy sells the corpse, assuming your opponent doesn't do anything unsavory with it, which they can. While victory on the Egyptian front was great, there was much worry in Londonum as the Bohemian army was sailing over, and it was big. Whatever distractions that had been holding them back before were clearly gone now, and the Empire would depend on Alparslan to keep their home safe. Londonum was put under siege, but its walls were paltry. Although Alparslan's army is small, he'll have to move out now or else give up Londonum. He took advantage of the poor choice on Bratislav's part to only partially disembark his army. If an army is embarked, it can't fight battles on land and vice versa, so the Bohemians were isolated into two smaller forces. Victory, but at a cost and without lifting the siege, as the embarked army continued on without their landed supports. If that army gets reinforced, it might make the defense of Londonum fail. Nonetheless, the city of Coalhaven, another Egyptian metropolis, fell under threat, and its destruction was inevitable. Bratislav's forces made their move on Londonum, and Alparslan bravely defended the city. He barely won the battle, being the only survivor of the entire fight. Londonum is saved, but if a follow-up attack were to come, it would be over. In the north, the city-state of Incantatum was sending raiding parties to Rome's countryside, which would require a response eventually, but for now wasn't something Alparslan could fight against. Not until he regains his army. In better news though, Coalhaven fell on day 99, and its plunder will produce the economic advantage Basil needs to get another great army up for Alparslan. The game lasts 150 turns by the way, so we're about 2/3 through the game now. Age of Wonders 4, as a 4X game, is actually relatively short, which I personally prefer. Games of Civilization, even on quick speed, can take forever, it feels like. Anyway, Basil spotted Saladin, cowering in his wizard tower by Cairo. There was nowhere to go but the grave. It was a bit of a downer for the mood of the siege camp though, when news of the dreaded follow-up attack from Vratislav reached Basil though. Alparslan does have reinforcements coming in, but it'll be an even closer defense than last time. Rather than lose his unlife though, Alparslan retreated and allowed the city to be taken, but only temporarily. It will take time for Vratislav's men to properly conquer the city, and in that time, Alparslan will ride in to save the Roman town. With his bronze golems and brave Roman warriors, Alparslan entered the city mid-pillage and removed the Bohemians, saving the city from further destruction. Meanwhile, despite me saying I thought the Draconian transformation would be too useful, I decided to Dragonify my people just because it's really cool. It's also because I realized that Robert Guiscard did actually provide buffs to friendly dragons in combat, and it's not too bad a buff either. So long as I'm using him, it's reasonable to make all of my units dragons. By now, the attacks from Vratislav have ended, as it's likely he's either out of men or once again distracted with other wars. This means Alparslan can build up his own army and perhaps begin a counterattack. Before getting to that though, it's time for another new tome, and I chose the Tome of Calamity. Since I've transformed my Romans into dragons, I may as well lean into dragons a bit more, and we can see that the Tome of Calamity unlocks the Calamity Dragon, which is a very powerful unit. When it's summoned, it desecrates the land it is summoned on and pillages it, but it spawns a tier 5 mythic dragon unit for me to use. In case it wasn't already clear, the aesthetic of the New Ways of War DLC broadly is a sort of Art of War Chinese influence, but there's no reason why the Romans can't embrace Chinese aesthetics, right? Anyway, Alp-Arslan began his expedition to Prague, while in his place, a new local hero was hired, an angelic orc from a culture known as the Hulking Liberators, Grar Vat, who was granted the Roman name Julius Caesar. He's going to fight off the marauding city-state raiders in the north of Rome, and if possible, burn down their city for their insolence. I also applied the Linked Minds transformation at this point. Finally, I just wasn't rolling in my research list for so long. By linking minds, our Romans will have even greater discipline and operate not as many Romans divided, but as one Roman, acting as a unified organism to create the ultimate empire. I sent out Julius Caesar to fight the enemy city-state, but he was handily defeated. I even tried fighting the battle manually, but it turns out that this city-state has an immensely strong defensive army which resists physical attacks heavily. My dragons don't know any magic, nor does Julius Caesar. Without magic to break down these iron golems, my men have no choice. And so, Julius Caesar, as quickly as he was recruited, was killed. His body was carted off to Incantatum. Roman pride was harmed more than anything else here, and Basil vowed that he would recover Julius Caesar's body for the pride of all Rome. It was as if the enemy had secured a Roman eagle, but worse, they secured a Roman hero. No matter the bad news, Cairo finally fell the next day, and Saladin was removed from this land, another adversary wiped from this realm by the Romans. The siege in Prague, led by Alp-Arslan, is so far going very well. No matter what forces Vratislav sends, they can't break the Roman lines. That was until Vratislav himself and a host of heroes arrived with a proper army to break the siege. They won the battle, handily, even after my attempt at winning it manually. I can't win, so I'm going to at least retreat Alp-Arslan so we can continue the fight. When units retreat, they have a chance of dying anyway, but if they do successfully get out, they reappear at your capital a few turns later. Before losing though, I made sure to kill Vratislav just to delay any potential counterattack. Hopefully he will wait until he's back from the void to try and take Londonum again. Thanks to my personal touch on the battle, Alp-Arslan escaped, and at least Vratislav was killed. Nonetheless, it was a horrific defeat, and it was an embarrassment for all Romans. A small counterattack did come to Londonum, and I decided to try and fend it off with just one Scald and one Wyvern. The enemy is composed of 2 heroes and nothing else. It took me a few tries, but I did find a way to win. I just kept avoiding them while casting damaging spells on them. Remember, Vratislav is in the void, so no spells can be cast. I have a huge advantage on account of that. 1 Wyvern and 1 Scald defeated 2 heroes of Bohemia, which would surely be an embarrassment for Vratislav if he were in the realm to hear of it. Cairo was integrated into the empire under El Cid by this point. I chose not to burn it down because I'd like to have a city in the south to help me project power there. Age of Wonders is a game with a pretty low city cap compared to other 4X games, but I can spend Imperium to increase my cap. Because I've been in these justified wars and I've been burning down other cities, I've gained a lot of Imperium, so I could actually afford to have 5 cities. I also unlocked one of the most powerful Chaos Empire skills, the Right of Possession, which sacrificed one of my pops in Constantinople to summon an extra powerful Baelor which gains stats every time it kills something. Prague and its resistance to Roman conquest will be destroyed, and this Baelor shall be the herald of it. Alongside the giant Baelor, I also summoned a Calamity Dragon, which destroyed one of my tiles but gave me this beautiful monster in return. Using this dragon's power and the strength of the Baelor, Alp-Arslan renewed his invasion of Bohemia, stopping first at Incantatum to retrieve the body of Julius Caesar. He regrouped with Basil and his forces before moving in as a show of force against this insolent city-state. Once the city is wiped from history, Prague will be next. The siege would be a long one though. Incantatum, presumably in preparation for the counterattack they knew was coming, made huge walls. While waiting, Basil found yet another tome to add to his collection. He chose the Tome of Chaos Channeling. Flames will cleanse his enemies of their will, but instead of going for any research in that tome, he instead began researching a spell to bind the power of ancient wonders to his empire. You see, we're about 30 turns from the game ending, and I need to start thinking about victory conditions. One such victory is to control 3 golden tier wonders, which I have, and cast a spell on them which binds them to you. If you can bind 3 wonders, then defend them from any attacker for 15 turns, and cast a legendary spell, you can win the game. I'm going for that as my win condition, but at the end of the day, I can always win with a score victory by just weakening my enemies, or I can rush a military victory by taking everyone's capitals. Incantatum was finally breached on day 121, and out of its crypt, Julius Caesar was retrieved and revived. While the city burned, the army loaded onto ships for Prague to continue the campaign. This time, Vratislav won't be able to resist the Roman siege. The Bohemian was no pushover nonetheless. He really tried to defend his home and mustered an immense army. It looked impressive, but in the face of a great dragon and Baelor, supported by brave, battle-hardened Romans, the battle ended with only one Roman casualty. What an absolutely immense victory. Speaking of victory, it looks like I'm falling behind in my hopes to win the game because of the immense strength of Frederick Barbarossa. He's managed to avoid most of the conflicts in the world and just build up a huge empire. He's already bound 2 golden wonders, and he's beating me in score. He's not beating me in army size though, and because of that, he is vulnerable. I bound the blighted tree, coating it in golden light, and then captured Prague with Vratislav in the void. Despite the Bohemians having more cities, losing the capital while being in the void simply ends the game. The remaining Bohemian cities become free cities, which I can either make peace with or continue to fight. I saw a great opportunity after the war. Frederick Barbarossa, it seems, was in the area when Prague fell. He was there without much support, just standing around. Maybe he was watching to see who would win the siege. He made an immense error in so doing. I declared war immediately and went straight for the dragon, casting Barbarossa into the void. This will give me 3 turns. I have a huge advantage over him as I make my way to Aachen. I also unlocked the ultimate tier 5 Chaos Tome, the Tome of the Chaos Lord. It will allow me to summon more Baelors, and it will give me a spell called Call Forth Avatar of Chaos, which lets me summon an exact copy of Basil himself in battles when he's not already fighting. This will make any home defense much easier, as Basil can always be present for every fight at the cost of just a little bit of mana. On the way to Aachen, I sieged down Clarion, a leftover Bohemian city-state, so I could use it as a hub of operations. In case I need to back up and gain some health, or I need some allies, I can make of this city a vassal and work from there. I'm not sure how strong Barbarossa is, so I need to be a little cautious. I have only 19 more turns to win the game, and right now he'd win by score. The city fell easily, and I bound another wonder while researching the Age of Chaos spell. Unfortunately, my research isn't so good, so by the time I research the spell, I won't have time to cast it before the game ends. Oh well, I'll just win by score then. Basil caught Barbarossa in the seas, maybe trying to make a move for Londonum or Prague. He was intercepted and banished to the void once again, and then the siege of Aachen began. The walls there were modest, neither pitiful nor impressive. It seems Barbarossa had not thought his city would ever be in danger, or else his people lacked the skill to construct defenses. Barbarossa called on his new ally Matilda to try and help, and they were indeed amassing quite the army to the north around a teleporter, but I got the feeling that they can't handle the power of my dragons and demons. Indeed, the red-bearded dragon was once again sent to the void, and yet so quickly another army was assembled. No one could accuse these holy Romans of being unproductive or unwilling to fight, but their discipline was nothing in the face of the machine that is Basil's Rome. Before more men could be assembled, Basil broke off from the siege, leaving a cursory army to maintain it, and brought the fight to Barbarossa, rather unexpectedly. Better to nip this army in the bud before it grows more. It was a wise move, as the entire army of both Matilda and Barbarossa was wiped out in a handful of engagements. Aachen was breached just as Barbarossa returned from the void, and with his city sacked and his life taken once more, he too was banished. There are just 10 years left in the game, and no other player comes close to my score. I am guaranteed to win. I added Aachen to my empire, making 7 cities total. I can only afford this thanks to my immense Imperium gained throughout the game. Normally, it'd be rare to go above 5 cities in my experience. Rome is gaining thousands of gold each day, and the Empire has truly dominated this realm. Sure, Matilda and Haston exist on the map still, but can they claim to be anything beyond mere insects in the face of Great Rome? On the last turn of the game, Basil burned down one more city, Sunshrine, and then the game ended with a score victory. Kind of anticlimactic, I know, but hey, we defeated the Holy Romans, the Egyptians, the Iberians, and the Bohemians to prove Rome's supremacy over everyone else. Let the unconquered barbarians wish they had been conquered. Let them lament their lives outside our empire. Woe to the unconquered. Vae Invictis. Basil shall ascend to the Pantheon as a warlord, which is a trait he'll have whenever he appears in another game. It makes him gain health and strength whenever a unit is slain. I'm not sure, but I think based on the wording, it's when any unit is slain on the field, even if he didn't slay it. Psych, at the last moment, I changed over to Master instead, which makes him dispel a debuff every turn. I picked it because it's new with Ways of War, and it's not bad honestly. After every completed campaign, I also get some Pantheon XP, which I can use to unlock some new stuff. I have most of the unlockable stuff in the game already, but with Ways of War, there are a couple new unlocks. Not many to be honest, not many, but some. I've just unlocked here a new society trait, the Vigilante Knights, which perhaps I'll go play around with on my next playthrough. So that was the story of Basileios Makedon and his first conquest of a new realm. He created a beautiful new Roman Empire over the corpses of his enemies. If you want to construct similar stories to this one, check out Age of Wonders 4 and make a pantheon of characters of your own. Have you got a D&D campaign with lovable characters? Put them in here. Let your imagination run wild, especially starting on November 7th, where Age of Wonders 4 will be free to play until November 11th. Trust me, the game is absolutely worth it even with no DLC. Thank you Paradox for the sponsorship, and thank you, dear viewer, for your time.